I stood frozen in the doorway of our bedroom, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. The soft glow of his phone screen illuminated his face in the darkness, and I watched as my husband of 12 years whispered words I'd never heard him say to me. Words that made my blood run cold, words that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. "I miss you too," he breathed into the phone, his voice tender in a way that felt like a knife sliding between my ribs. "She's asleep. She never suspects anything." But I wasn't asleep, and I heard every single word. "My name is Caroline, and for 12 years I believed I was living the perfect life. A beautiful home in the suburbs, 2 children who lit up my world, and a husband who I thought loved me with every fiber of his being." David worked as a financial consultant, traveled occasionally for business, and always came home with that tired smile that made me want to take care of him. We had our routines. Our little traditions. The way he'd kiss my forehead every morning before work. The way we'd sit together after the kids went to bed and talk about our day. I thought I knew him. I thought I knew us. That night started like any other. David said he was exhausted from a long day of client meetings. He kissed the kids goodnight, gave me that familiar peck on the cheek, and went to bed early. Around 10:30, I finished folding the laundry and decided to join him. The hallway was dark, and I walked quietly, not wanting to wake him if he'd already fallen asleep. That's when I heard it, his voice, soft and intimate, coming from our bedroom. I stopped just outside the door, my hand frozen on the doorknob. Something in his tone made my stomach twist. It wasn't the voice he used with clients. It wasn't the voice he used with his friends. It was something else entirely, something private. Something that didn't belong to me. I pushed the door open slowly, just a crack, and peered inside. David was lying on his side of the bed, his back to the door, phone pressed against his ear. The blue light from the screen cast shadows across the wall, and I watched those shadows dance as he spoke words that would haunt me forever. "I can't wait to see you next week," he whispered. "These trips are the only thing keeping me sane right now." I felt my knees go weak. My hand gripped the doorframe to steady myself. "No, she doesn't know," he continued, his voice dropping even lower. "Caroline's so wrapped up in the kids and her little projects, she barely notices when I'm gone. It's actually perfect. Perfect." He called my ignorance perfect. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burst into that room and demand answers. But something held me back. Some instinct told me that if I confronted him now, in this moment, I'd only get lies. Denials. Excuses. I needed to know everything. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before I made my move. So I stood there in that dark hallway, listening to my husband plan his betrayal, and I made a decision. I would wait, I would watch, and I would discover the truth. "I love you too," he whispered before ending the call. Those 3 words felt like a death sentence. I backed away from the door silently, my heart racing, my mind spinning with questions. How long had this been going on? Who was she? Did he really love her, or was this just some sick game? And how could I have been so blind? I went to the guest bathroom and locked the door, sitting on the edge of the tub with my hand pressed over my mouth to muffle the sobs that wanted to escape. I couldn't fall apart. Not yet, not when I needed to think clearly. I stayed there for nearly an hour, letting the shock wash over me in waves. Then I washed my face, steadied my breathing, and made my way back to our bedroom. David was asleep now, or pretending to be. I slipped into bed beside him, staring at the ceiling in the darkness, feeling like a stranger in my own life. The man lying next to me wasn't the person I thought I'd married, and I had no idea who he really was. Morning came with cruel normalcy. The alarm went off at 6:30, just like always. David stretched, yawned, and turned to give me that same forehead kiss he'd given me for 12 years. I forced myself not to flinch. Not to pull away. I had to act normal. I had to make him believe nothing had changed. "Morning, beautiful," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. Beautiful. The word tasted like poison. "Morning," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Coffee? You're the best," he said, climbing out of bed and heading for the shower. I went downstairs and started the coffee maker, my hands moving on autopilot while my mind raced through possibilities. I needed information. I needed evidence, but I couldn't let him know I was looking. The kids came thundering down the stairs, arguing about whose turn it was to pick the breakfast cereal. Emma, our 10-year-old, and Jake, who just turned 8. They filled the kitchen with their noise and energy, completely unaware that their mother's world had collapsed just hours earlier. I made them breakfast, packed their lunches, reminded them to brush their teeth. Normal mom things. Things I'd done 1,000 times before. But now every action felt mechanical, like I was watching myself perform from somewhere far away. David came down looking sharp in his navy suit, his hair still damp from the shower. He poured himself coffee, kissed the kids on their heads, and grabbed his briefcase. "I've got back-to-back meetings all day," he said, giving me a quick peck on the cheek. Might be home a little late. Was he really in meetings, or was he with her? "No problem," I said with a smile that felt like it might crack my face. "I'll keep dinner warm." He left, and I stood at the kitchen window watching his car pull out of the driveway. The moment he was out of sight, I pulled out my phone and did something I never thought I'd do. I opened his wireless account and checked the phone records. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the list of calls. There were dozens of numbers I recognized. Clients, colleagues, family members. But there was one number that appeared again and again, especially late at night. Calls that lasted 30 minutes, 40 minutes, sometimes over an hour. I copied that number and my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then I did a reverse phone lookup. The name that came up made me grip the counter for support. Melissa Chen. I knew that name. David had mentioned her before. She was one of the junior consultants at his firm. Young, ambitious, always eager to take on extra projects. He talked about mentoring her, helping her advance her career. I'd even felt proud of him for being such a supportive colleague. What a fool I'd been. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at that name on my phone screen. My husband wasn't just having an affair. He was having an affair with someone he worked with every single day. Someone who probably sat in meetings with him, laughed at his jokes, shared coffee breaks and working lunches. Someone who was part of his daily life in a way that felt like a second marriage. The betrayal went so much deeper than I'd imagined. I needed to see her. I needed to know what she looked like, how she acted, what made David risk everything we'd built together. So I opened social media and searched for her name. Her profile popped up immediately. Pretty, maybe late 20s with long, dark hair and a confident smile. Her profile was full of professional photos, motivational quotes, posts about career success and personal growth. She looked ambitious, driven, young, everything I wasn't anymore. I scrolled through her photos feeling sick. There were pictures of her at office events, at conferences, at happy hours with colleagues. And there, in the background of one photo from a company retreat 3 months ago, was David, standing just a little too close to her. Looking at her in a way that made my stomach turn. How had I not seen this before? I saved screenshots of everything, the phone records, her profile, that photo from the retreat. I didn't know what I was going to do with this information yet, but I knew I needed to document everything. Then I heard the garage door opening. Panic shot through me. David wasn't supposed to be back for hours. I quickly closed all the apps on my phone and stood up, trying to look casual as the door from the garage opened. But it wasn't David. It was my neighbor, Patricia, letting herself in through the side door we always kept unlocked for each other. "Caroline? You home?" she called out. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. In the kitchen, Patricia walked in with a casserole dish in her hands, her usual cheerful smile on her face. "Made too much lasagna last night. Thought you guys might want some for dinner." Patricia was in her 60s, a widow who'd lived next door for as long as we'd been in the house. She'd become like a mother to me, always dropping by with food or offering to watch the kids when I needed help. "You're a lifesaver," I said, taking the dish from her and setting it on the counter. She studied my face for a moment, her expression shifting to concern. "Everything okay, honey? You look a little pale." I opened my mouth to say I was fine, to brush off her worry with some excuse about not sleeping well. But something in her kind eyes made the walls I'd built that morning start to crumble. "Patricia," I heard myself say, my voice barely above a whisper. Can I ask you something? Of course, dear, anything. I sat down at the table and she joined me, reaching across to take my hand. If you found out someone you loved was lying to you, I said carefully, someone you trusted completely, would you confront them right away, or would you wait until you knew everything? Patricia's grip on my hand tightened. What's going on, Caroline? And just like that, the dam broke. I told her everything. The phone call I'd overheard, the phone records. Melissa Chen. All of it came pouring out while Patricia sat there, her face growing more and more troubled. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. That bastard, she finally said, her voice hard with anger. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I don't know what to do, I admitted, wiping tears from my cheeks. Part of me wants to scream at him. Throw him out. But another part of me just feels numb. Like this isn't really happening. Patricia squeezed my hand. What you're feeling is normal. Shock. Betrayal. Anger. It's all normal. But I'm going to tell you something important, and I need you to listen carefully. I looked at her, seeing something fierce in her expression. Don't confront him yet, she said. Not until you know exactly what you're dealing with. Men like this, they're good at lying. They'll twist things around, make you feel crazy for suspecting them. You need proof. Real proof. And you need to protect yourself financially and legally before you make any moves. You sound like you've been through this, I said quietly. Her expression darkened. My late husband wasn't always the saint I made him out to be. I learned some hard lessons about how these things work. Let me help you, Caroline. You shouldn't have to go through this alone. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. Thank you. I don't even know where to start. We start by being smart, Patricia said firmly. We gather evidence. We protect your assets. And we make sure that when you're ready to make your move, you're holding all the cards. Trust me, honey. He's not going to know what hit him. Over the next few days, I became someone I didn't recognize. I smiled at David over breakfast, kissed him goodbye, asked about his day when he came home, all while secretly documenting every suspicious moment, every late night, every unexplained absence. Patricia became my partner in this strange investigation. She helped me think clearly when my emotions threatened to overwhelm me. She reminded me to stay calm, to plan carefully, to not give anything away. You're doing great, she'd tell me during our morning coffee sessions after the kids left for school and David went to work. I know it's hard, but you need to keep playing the part a little longer. I'd set up a hidden folder on my phone where I stored all the evidence. Phone records showing calls to Melissa at odd hours, screenshots of texts I managed to glimpse when David left his phone unattended, credit card statements showing charges at restaurants and hotels I'd never been to. Each piece of evidence felt like another weight on my chest. But I kept gathering them, knowing I'd need everything I could get. One afternoon, while cleaning David's home office, I found something that made my hand shake. Tucked away in the back of his desk drawer was a receipt from a jewelry store downtown, dated 3 weeks ago, for a diamond necklace costing $3,000. I'd never received any diamond necklace. I took a photo of the receipt and put it back exactly where I'd found it. Then I sat in his office chair, looking around at all the trappings of our successful life together. The family photos on the shelves, the diplomas and awards on the walls. The picture of us on our wedding day, both of us so young and full of hope. Who was this man I'd married? When had he become someone capable of this level of deception? My phone buzzed with a text from David. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Working late. Right. I texted back a casual response, then immediately called Patricia. He says he's working late, I told her. I want to know if that's true. Then let's find out, Patricia said without hesitation. I'll come over and stay with the kids. You follow him. Patricia, I can't just… Yes, you can, she interrupted firmly. You need to see this with your own eyes, Caroline. You need to know for sure. She was right. I was tired of gathering evidence from a distance. I needed to witness the truth firsthand. That evening, I told the kids that Patricia was coming over for a while, and I had to run some errands. They barely looked up from their homework and video games. Patricia arrived right on time, giving me an encouraging nod as I grabbed my car keys. Be careful, she said. And call me if you need anything." I drove to David's office building downtown, parking across the street where I could see the entrance. My heart was racing, my palms sweaty on the steering wheel. I felt ridiculous, like some character in a bad movie. But I couldn't turn back now. At 6:45, David emerged from the building, but he wasn't alone. Melissa Chen walked beside him, laughing at something he'd said. They looked comfortable together. Easy. Like this was the most natural thing in the world. I watched as David opened the passenger door of his car for her, a small gesture but one that cut deep. He used to do that for me. When had he stopped? I followed them through downtown traffic, staying a few cars back. My whole body felt tight with anxiety. They drove to an upscale Italian restaurant I'd been wanting to try for months. David had always said it was too expensive, that we should save our money for the kids' college funds. Apparently those rules didn't apply when he was with her. I parked down the street and watched them walk into the restaurant together. Through the window, I could see the host leading them to a corner table, a romantic spot. Intimate. David pulled out her chair for her. Then he sat down across from her, reaching across the table to take her hand. I felt like I was watching my marriage die in real time. I sat in my car for over an hour, watching them through that window, watching them talk and laugh and share a bottle of wine. Watching David look at her the way he used to look at me, and I realized something that hurt more than the betrayal itself. He was happy, genuinely, visibly happy. Happier than I'd seen him in years. When they finally left the restaurant, I expected David to drop her off somewhere and head home. But instead, they drove to a boutique hotel on the edge of downtown, the kind of place with discreet entrances and no questions asked. I watched them walk in together, David's hand on the small of her back, and I knew exactly how deep this betrayal went. I drove home in a daze, barely registering the traffic around me. When I walked through the door, Patricia took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. "You saw them," she said softly. I nodded against her shoulder, too numb to cry. "Then, now you know," Patricia said, pulling back to look at me. "Now you know exactly who you're dealing with, and now you can make your plan." That night marked a turning point. I was done being the victim, done crying in dark bathrooms and pretending everything was fine. If David wanted to destroy our marriage, fine, but he wasn't going to walk away unscathed. He wasn't going to get to ride off into the sunset with his young girlfriend while I picked up the pieces. I spent the next week consulting with a divorce attorney Patricia recommended. A sharp woman named Rebecca Torres who specialized in cases involving infidelity and financial misconduct. "The evidence you've gathered is excellent," Rebecca told me during our first meeting, reviewing the folder I'd compiled. "Phone records, photos, credit card statements, witness testimony from you following them. This is more than enough to prove adultery." "What does that mean for the divorce?" I asked. "It means we have leverage," Rebecca said with a slight smile. "Depending on your state's laws and how we play this, it could affect everything from asset division to alimony. But more importantly, it means we control the narrative. He's the one who broke his vows. He's the one who betrayed your trust. That matters in court, but it also matters in the court of public opinion." I leaned forward. "What do you mean? Your husband works at a prestigious consulting firm, correct? One that prides itself on integrity and professional ethics?" I nodded. "Infidelity with a subordinate is a massive liability for any company," Rebecca explained. "It opens them up to harassment claims, creates a hostile work environment, damages their reputation. If his firm found out about this relationship, they'd have to take action, especially if it's affecting his work or creating conflicts of interest." An idea began forming in my mind. "So, if someone were to report this to his company, it would force them to investigate," Rebecca confirmed. "And David would likely face serious professional consequences. Possibly even termination, depending on company policy and how the relationship developed." I sat back, thinking hard. David had built his entire identity around his career. He loved the prestige, the respect, the six-figure salary. His job wasn't just how he made money. It was who he was. "There's something else," I said, remembering a conversation from months ago. David's up for promotion to senior partner. The decision's being made next month. It's something he's worked toward for years. Rebecca's eyes lit up. That changes everything. If we time this right, we can ensure that promotion disappears before he even knows what's happening. I want to file for divorce, I told her. But I want to wait until after I've reported him to his company. I want him to lose everything before he even knows I'm leaving. Rebecca studied me for a moment. That's going to be difficult. You'll have to keep up the pretense for a few more weeks. Can you do that? I thought about David whispering to Melissa on the phone. David buying her expensive jewelry. David taking her to hotels while I waited at home with our children. Yes, I said firmly. I can do that. Over the next 2 weeks, I played my part perfectly. I was the devoted wife, the supportive partner. I even encouraged David when he came home stressed about the upcoming promotion decision. You're going to get it, I told him one night over dinner. They'd be crazy not to promote you. He smiled at me with what looked like genuine affection. Thanks, Caroline. Your support means everything to me. The lies came so easily to him, it was almost impressive. Behind the scenes, I was building my case. Rebecca helped me compile a comprehensive report detailing David's relationship with Melissa. We documented the timeline, the expenses charged to his company credit card for personal outings with her, the conflict of interest involved in him mentoring someone he was sleeping with. We even found evidence that he'd helped inflate her performance reviews, giving her bonuses she likely didn't deserve based on her actual work. It was professional misconduct layered on top of personal betrayal. This is solid, Rebecca told me after reviewing everything. His company will have no choice but to act on this. Are you ready? I thought about my children sleeping upstairs. About the life I'd built that was about to implode. About the fact that there was no going back from this moment. I'm ready, I said. Rebecca helped me draft an anonymous complaint to David's company's ethics hotline. We laid out everything, provided documentation, and made it clear that this wasn't just about personal matters but about professional misconduct that put the company at risk. I sent it on a Tuesday morning after David left for work. Then I waited. The investigation moved faster than I expected. By Wednesday afternoon, David came home looking shaken. They're investigating some kind of ethics complaint at work, he told me, loosening his tie with trembling hands. Something about inappropriate relationships between supervisors and subordinates. That's terrible, I said, my voice full of concern. Do they think you did something wrong? No, of course not, he said quickly. Too quickly. But they're interviewing everyone. Going through expense reports. It's just a headache. I brought him a drink and rubbed his shoulders, playing the supportive wife while inside I felt a fierce satisfaction. Let him squirm. Let him worry. This was just the beginning. By Friday, the atmosphere in our house had changed. David was stressed, irritable, constantly checking his phone. He barely ate dinner. Snapped at the kids over nothing. Is everything okay? I asked, keeping my tone gentle. It's fine, he said sharply, then softer. Sorry. Work stuff. It's complicated. That weekend, Patricia came over for coffee while David was out. I told her everything that was happening. The trap is closing, she said with satisfaction. How do you feel? Scared, I admitted, but also stronger than I've felt in weeks. I'm not just reacting anymore. I'm in control. Good, Patricia said. Because the hard part is still coming. When he finds out you knew all along, he's going to be angry. Defensive. Men like him don't handle humiliation well. I'm ready for it, I told her. And I meant it. Monday morning arrived with a phone call that changed everything. David's phone rang at 7 in the morning. I watched his face drain of color as he answered. Yes, I understand, he said quietly. I'll be there in an hour. He hung up and stood there for a moment, staring at nothing. What is it? I asked. I have to go to the office. They want to meet with me and HR. My heart was pounding, but I kept my expression neutral. About the investigation? I think so. He looked at me, and for a moment I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Caroline, there's something I need to tell you. This was it, the moment of truth. What is it? I asked, my voice steady. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Shook his head. Never mind. I'm sure it's nothing. I'll tell you when I get home. Coward. He couldn't even come clean when he knew he was caught. I watched him leave, then immediately called Rebecca. He's being called in, I told her. It's happening. Good, she said. Get ready, Caroline. Once he's suspended or terminated, he's going to come home looking for someone to blame. Make sure you and the kids are safe. Maybe have Patricia there with you. I spent the day in a state of nervous energy. I couldn't sit still, couldn't focus on anything. I kept checking my phone, waiting for news. It came at 2:30 in the afternoon. A text from David. We need to talk. Coming home now. I called Patricia immediately. She was at my door in 5 minutes. The kids are still at school, I told her. They won't be home for another hour. Then let's make sure you're ready for this, Patricia said. We sat in the kitchen, waiting. I could hear my own heartbeat in the silence. When David's car pulled into the driveway, I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to stay steady. He came through the door looking destroyed. His suit was rumpled, his tie loosened, his eyes red like he'd been crying. Caroline, he said, his voice breaking. What happened? I asked, though I already knew. They suspended me, he said, slumping into a chair at the kitchen table. Pending investigation. They know about Melissa and me. They have evidence. Phone records, expense reports, everything. He put his head in his hands. I don't understand how this happened. Who could have reported us? I felt Patricia's hand on my shoulder, a silent gesture of support. You and Melissa, I repeated, my voice carefully neutral. What about you and Melissa? He looked up at me, and in that moment I saw him realize his mistake, saw him understand that he'd just confirmed what I might not have known. Caroline, I can explain. Can you? I interrupted, my voice harder now. Can you explain why you've been having an affair with a woman from your office? Can you explain the late-night phone calls, the hotel visits? The diamond necklace that cost $3,000 that I never received? His face went white. You knew? I knew, I said, and it felt like power flowing back into my body. I've known for weeks, David. I heard you on the phone with her. I followed you to that hotel. I've been documenting everything. He stood up, his expression shifting from shock to anger. You've been spying on me? Don't you dare, I said, my voice rising. Don't you dare try to make me the villain here. You're the one who betrayed our marriage. You're the one who threw away 12 years for some girl half your age. You're the one who lied to my face every single day. It's not what you think, he said desperately. Melissa and I, it just happened. You never meant to get caught, I finished for him. That's what you never meant. But you did get caught, David. And now, you're going to face the consequences. He looked at Patricia as if noticing her for the first time. This is private. Between my wife and me. Patricia's staying, I said firmly, and you're going to listen to what I have to say. David sank back into his chair, looking like a man watching his world crumble. Good. Let him feel a fraction of what I'd felt. How long? I asked. How long has this been going on? He was quiet for a moment. Then, quietly, 8 months. 8 months. Almost a year of lies. Do you love her? The question hurt to ask, but I needed to know. I don't know, he said, and somehow that answer was worse than a yes would have been. I care about her, but I love you too, Caroline. I love our family. You have a funny way of showing it, I said bitterly. Did you think about us at all? About Emma and Jake? About what this would do to them? Every day, he said, looking up at me with tears in his eyes. Every single day I felt guilty, but I couldn't stop. It was like I was living 2 lives and I couldn't figure out how to choose. So you chose both, I said. You wanted to have your perfect family and your exciting affair. You wanted everything without having to sacrifice anything. He didn't deny it. The suspension, Patricia spoke up. Tell her about the suspension. David flinched at her voice. They're investigating the relationship. The ethics violation. They found evidence that I used company resources for personal matters with Melissa. That I showed favoritism in her reviews and bonus allocations. They're talking about termination. What about the promotion? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Gone, he said flatly. They told me today. Even if the investigation somehow clears me, which it won't, the promotion is off the table. I felt no sympathy, only a cold satisfaction. What about Melissa? I asked. What's happening to her? She's being transferred to a different department. Different supervisor. She'll keep her job probably. She's young. She can claim she was manipulated by someone in power over her. His voice was bitter, which might actually be true in a way. Don't, I warned him. Don't you dare try to make yourself the victim here. I'm not, he said quickly. I know what I did. I know I destroyed everything. Caroline, please. We can fix this. I'll end things with Melissa completely. I'll do whatever it takes. Counseling, therapy, anything. Just please don't give up on us. I looked at this man I'd shared my life with, the father of my children. My partner for 12 years. And I felt nothing but exhaustion. I already gave up on us, I told him, the moment you decided she was worth more than our marriage. That's not fair, he said, standing up. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. But people have affairs and work through them. It happens all the time. Not this time, I said firmly. I've already filed for divorce, David. The silence that followed was deafening. You, what? He finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I filed 3 days ago, I told him. You'll be served with papers this week. I suggest you find yourself a lawyer. His face went through a series of expressions. Shock. Disbelief. Anger. You can't do this. You can't just throw away our marriage without even trying to save it. I'm not the one who threw it away, I said. You did that all by yourself. What about the kids, he demanded. What about Emma and Jake? You're going to destroy their family over this? You destroyed their family, I shot back. Don't put this on me. Every choice you made, every lie you told, every night you spent with her instead of being home with us, that's what destroyed this family. He turned to Patricia, desperate now. You put her up to this. You convinced her to do this. I supported her, Patricia said calmly. The way a real friend does. The way someone who actually cares about her would. Which is apparently something you forgot how to do. David's hands were shaking. Caroline, please. Think about this. Think about what you're doing. I'll lose my job, my career, everything I've worked for. You should have thought about that before, I said coldly. Actions have consequences, David. You're just not used to facing them. I can't believe you'd be this vindictive, he said, his voice rising. Reporting me to my company? Destroying my career? That's cruel, Caroline. That's not who you are. You don't get to tell me who I am, I said, my voice steel. Not anymore. You gave up that right when you decided I wasn't enough for you. He stared at me for a long moment, and I watched as the realization finally hit him. This wasn't going to be some tearful reconciliation. This wasn't going to be me taking him back after he begged forgiveness. This was real. This was happening. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. Where am I supposed to go? He asked quietly. I don't care, I told him. But you're not staying here. Pack a bag. You can stay at a hotel or with friends or with Melissa for all I care, but you're not sleeping under this roof tonight. This is my house too, he said, a last desperate attempt at control. Actually, according to the temporary orders my lawyer filed, you need to vacate the marital home during the divorce proceedings. I pulled out a folded document from my pocket and handed it to him. You have until tomorrow evening to collect your essential items. After that, we'll arrange a time for you to get the rest of your things. He took the document with shaking hands, staring at it like it was written in a foreign language. I need to be here when you tell the kids, he said. They need to hear it from both of us. On that point, I agreed. As much as I wanted him gone, our children deserved to hear the truth from both their parents. Tomorrow, I said, after school. We'll sit down with them together, but until then, you need to leave. He stood there for another moment, looking around our kitchen like he was seeing it for the first time. Or maybe the last time. Then, without another word, he walked upstairs to pack. I sank into a chair, my legs finally giving out. Patricia immediately wrapped her arms around me. You did it, she whispered. You were so strong. But I didn't feel strong. I felt empty, hollowed out. victorious but also destroyed. 20 minutes later, David came down with a duffel bag. He paused at the kitchen door, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what it's worth, I'm truly sorry." "So am I," I replied, and I meant it. I was sorry for all of it, sorry that our marriage had come to this. Sorry that our kids would grow up in a broken home, sorry that the man I'd loved had turned into someone I didn't recognize. But mostly, I was sorry that I'd wasted so much time trusting someone who didn't deserve it. He left, and I heard his car pull out of the driveway. The house felt different without him in it, quieter, but also lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. Patricia stayed with me until the kids came home from school. We decided not to tell them anything yet, not until David and I could sit down with them together. So I put on my mom face and helped them with homework and made dinner like it was a normal day. But as I tucked Emma into bed that night, she looked up at me with worried eyes. "Where's Dad?" she asked. "He had to stay in town for work," I said, keeping my voice light. "He'll be home tomorrow." She studied my face, and I wondered how much she could sense of the truth beneath my words. "Are you okay, Mom?" she asked. "You seem sad." I kissed her forehead. "I'm fine, sweetheart." "Get some sleep." But after I closed her door and stood alone in the hallway, I finally let myself cry. Not for David. Not for our marriage. But for my children, who were about to learn that their world wasn't as stable as they thought. And for the woman I used to be, who believed in forever and happily ever after. That woman was gone now. And in her place was someone harder. Someone who knew that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes trust, once broken, can never be repaired. And sometimes the only way forward is to burn everything down and start again from the ashes. The next afternoon, David arrived at 4 o'clock as we'd agreed. I'd sent the kids to play in the backyard, wanting a few moments to prepare before we sat them down. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes, rumpled clothes like he hadn't slept. Part of me felt a flicker of sympathy, but then I remembered his whispered phone calls, his lies, his betrayal. And that sympathy died. "How do you want to do this?" he asked quietly. "We tell them the truth," I said. "Age appropriate, but honest. We're getting divorced. It's not their fault. We both still love them," the usual script. "Do we tell them about?" He couldn't even finish the sentence. "About your affair?" I finished for him. "No. Not now. They're too young. Someday, when they're older, maybe they'll ask questions. But for now, we just tell them that sometimes marriages end, and it doesn't mean anyone did anything wrong, even though that was a lie. Even though someone very definitely did something wrong." We called the kids inside and sat them down in the living room. Emma immediately sensed something was off. She was perceptive like that, always had been. Jake just looked confused about why we were having a family meeting in the middle of a weekday. "There's something your dad and I need to talk to you about," I started, and my voice was steadier than I expected. "It's important, and we need you both to listen carefully." Emma's eyes filled with tears before I even said the words. She knew. Somehow, she knew. "Your mom and I have decided to get a divorce," David said, and hearing him say it out loud made it feel suddenly, terrifyingly real. Jake frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means Mom and I won't be married anymore," David explained gently. "We won't be living together, but we'll both still be your parents, and we both still love you very much." "Why?" Emma asked, her voice breaking. "Why are you getting divorced?" I looked at David, and we'd agreed on this answer beforehand. "Sometimes adults change," I said carefully. "Sometimes people who loved each other realize they're not right for each other anymore. It's not anyone's fault. It just happens." But Emma was shaking her head. "That doesn't make sense." "You guys were fine. Everything was fine." "I know it seems sudden," David said, reaching for her hand. She pulled away. "Is there someone else?" Emma asked, looking directly at her father. "Did you cheat on Mom?" The question hung in the air. I hadn't expected her to ask so directly. She was only 10, but she was smart. Too smart to be fooled by vague explanations. David's face went pale. He looked at me, and I could see him silently begging me to help. But I just waited. This was his mess to handle. "Sweetheart, that's a complicated question," he started. It's not complicated, Emma said, tears streaming down her face now. Either you did or you didn't. Emma, there are things you'll understand better when you're older, I intervened, not to save David but to save her from this conversation. Right now, all you need to know is that your dad and I both love you and Jake more than anything in the world. This divorce is about us, not about you. I don't want you to get divorced, Jake said suddenly, his voice small. Can't you just say sorry and make up? My heart broke. I'm afraid it's not that simple, buddy. But families are supposed to stay together, he insisted, and I could hear the panic creeping into his voice. You're supposed to fix it. That's what you always tell us to do when we fight with our friends. Work it out. Say sorry. Fix it. David moved to sit next to Jake on the couch, pulling him into a hug. You're right that saying sorry is important, and I am sorry. So sorry. But sometimes, even when people say sorry, things can't go back to the way they were. That's not fair, Jake said, starting to cry now too. I know, David said, his own voice thick with tears. I know it's not fair. And I'm so sorry. We spent the next hour answering questions, trying to reassure them, making promises about how things would work. David would find an apartment nearby. The kids would stay in this house with me. There would be a custody schedule worked out. They'd still see both of us. Nothing fundamental would change about how much we loved them. But everything fundamental had already changed, and we all knew it. When we finally let them go back to their rooms, they both looked shell-shocked. Emma went straight upstairs without a word. Jake hugged me tight before following his sister, whispering, I love you, Mommy, in a way that made my chest ache. David and I were left alone in the living room, exhausted. That was the hardest thing I've ever done, he said quietly. You've done harder things, I replied, my voice cold, like lying to them every day for 8 months. Like destroying their family for an affair. Can we please not do this now? He asked tiredly. I'm drained, Caroline. I can't fight with you right now. I'm not fighting, I said, I'm just stating facts. You did this. You made these choices. And now our kids are upstairs crying because their dad couldn't keep it in his pants. He flinched. I get it. You hate me. I deserve that. But can we at least try to be civil, for their sake? I don't hate you, I said, and realized it was true. I don't feel anything for you at all anymore. That's worse than hate. At least hate is something. He looked at me with something like grief in his eyes. When did you stop loving me? I thought about that. The night I heard you on the phone with her. The moment you said I barely noticed when you were gone. That's when I knew the man I loved was already gone. I just hadn't accepted it yet. I never wanted this, he said. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did it anyway, I replied. That's the thing about wanting, David. It doesn't matter what you wanted. It matters what you did. He stood up, picking up his jacket. I should go, but Caroline, I need to know. The company, was that you? Did you report me? I met his eyes steadily. Yes, why? His voice cracked. Wasn't the divorce enough? Did you have to destroy my career too? You destroyed your career, I said. You slept with a subordinate. You used company resources for personal affairs. You violated ethics policies. I just made sure the right people knew about it. You did this to yourself. I could lose everything, he said desperately. My job, my reputation, my career. Everything I've built. Now you know how it feels, I said quietly, to have someone take away everything you thought was solid and permanent. To watch your whole world crumble. Welcome to the club. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his expression. Realization, maybe. Understanding that the woman standing in front of him wasn't the same person he'd married. That I'd changed, hardened. Become someone capable of calculated revenge. I don't even recognize you anymore, he said. Good, I replied, because the woman you knew was a fool who trusted you. Be grateful you'll never have to deal with her again. He left without another word, and I stood in the living room listening to his car drive away. Then I went upstairs to check on the kids. Emma's door was closed. I knocked softly. Can I come in? I guess, came her muffled reply. I found her lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling. I sat down next to her, not saying anything, just being present. I heard you and Dad fighting, she said after a while. Last night when you thought I was asleep, I heard you yell at him about someone named Melissa. My stomach dropped. Emma, he cheated on you, she stated flatly. That's why you're getting divorced. There was no point in lying. She already knew. Yes, I hate him, she said, and the venom in her voice shocked me. Don't say that, I told her gently. He's still your father. He still loves you. He destroyed our family, she said, tears streaming down her face again. How am I supposed to not hate him? I pulled her into my arms, letting her cry against my shoulder. You're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to feel whatever you feel. But try to remember that people are complicated. Your dad made terrible choices. He hurt me, and he hurt this family, but he's not all bad. He's still the dad who taught you to ride a bike and helped with your science projects and made pancakes on Sunday mornings. How can you defend him, she asked, after what he did? I'm not defending him, I said carefully. I'm just trying to help you understand that you can be angry at someone and still love them. Those feelings can exist together. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. Are you angry? I admitted. I'm still processing it all. But mostly, I just feel sad. Sad that things ended this way. Sad that you and Jake have to go through this. It's not fair, she whispered. No, I agreed. It's not fair at all. I stayed with her until she fell asleep, emotionally exhausted. Then I went to check on Jake, who was building with Legos on his floor, his way of coping with stress. Can I help? I asked. He nodded, and we sat together building in silence for a while. Finally, he asked, Is Dad going to be okay? The question surprised me. Even in his pain, he was worried about his father. He will be, I assured him. Things are hard right now, but he'll figure it out. Are you going to be okay? He asked, not looking up from his Legos. Yeah, buddy. I'm gonna be okay too. Promise? I promise. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and establishing new routines. David found an apartment across town and moved out his things while the kids were at school. I made sure not to be home when he came. I couldn't trust myself not to say something I'd regret in front of the movers. Rebecca, my lawyer, was a force of nature. She went after David's assets with precision and determination. His affair gives us leverage, she explained during one of our meetings. Especially given the financial misconduct aspect. The money he spent on Melissa, the gifts, the hotel rooms. Some of that was marital funds. We can argue that he dissipated assets. What does that mean? I asked. It means the court can factor that wasteful spending into the asset division. He essentially stole from the marriage to fund his affair. Judges don't look kindly on that. We also discovered that David had been planning for a different future than I'd known about. There was a secret credit card I'd never seen. A savings account in his name only. Small amounts siphoned away over months. He'd been preparing to leave, even if he hadn't fully admitted it to himself. This is actually helpful, Rebecca said when we uncovered these accounts. It shows premeditation, financial deception. It all supports our case. Meanwhile, David's career situation went from bad to worse. After a 2-week investigation, his company made their decision. Termination for ethics violations. No severance package. No glowing references. His 12-year career with them ended with a form letter and a box of personal items from his office. He called me when it happened, his voice broken. They fired me, Caroline. They actually fired me. I'm sorry, I said, and part of me meant it, not for him, but for the situation. For the fact that our lives had come to this. Are you? He asked bitterly. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Total destruction. I wanted you to face consequences for your actions, I corrected him. That's not the same thing. My career is over, he said. Do you understand that? No reputable firm is going to hire me now. Not with this on my record. I'm 43 years old and I'm starting from scratch. Then start from scratch, I said without sympathy. Other people do it every day. You're not special just because you're finally facing the results of your choices. He hung up on me. I didn't call back. But the victory felt hollow, because while David was dealing with professional consequences, our children were struggling with emotional ones. Emma had become withdrawn, spending hours in her room. Jake had started having nightmares, waking up crying in the middle of the night. Both of them were seeing a child therapist now, trying to process the upheaval in their lives. "This is normal," the therapist assured me. "Children of divorce often experience anxiety, sleep disturbances, changes in behavior. With support and consistency, they'll adjust. But it takes time. Time. The one thing I couldn't speed up or control." The custody arrangement we'd worked out gave me primary custody, with David having the kids every other weekend and one weeknight for dinner. It was less time than he'd wanted, but given his current employment situation and the circumstances of the divorce, his lawyer had advised him not to fight for more. That first weekend the kids went to stay with him at his new apartment was torture. I spent Saturday pacing the house, checking my phone constantly, fighting the urge to call and make sure they were okay. Patricia found me sitting on the couch at 8 o'clock Saturday night, staring at nothing. "They're fine," she said gently, sitting down next to me. "How do you know?" "Because David, for all his faults, loves those kids. He's not going to let anything happen to them." "I know," I said. "I just hate not being there, not knowing if they're okay." "Welcome to co-parenting," Patricia said wryly. "It's one of the hardest parts of divorce, learning to trust that your kids are safe even when they're not with you." "I don't trust him," I admitted. "You don't have to trust him as a husband anymore," Patricia pointed out, "but you do have to trust him as a father. Those are different things." When the kids came home Sunday night, they were quiet, but seemed okay. Emma told me about the pizza they'd had for dinner. Jake showed me a new video game David had bought him. They weren't traumatized. Just adjusting. Learning to navigate their new reality. "Did you have fun with Dad?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "It was okay," Emma said with a shrug. "His apartment is smaller than I thought it would be. He said he's looking for a job," Jake offered. "He made us pancakes for breakfast like he used to." I felt an unexpected stab of something. Not jealousy exactly, maybe nostalgia for the life we used to have. The Sunday morning pancakes. The lazy weekends together as a family. "That's good," I managed to say. Over the next month I watched David spiral. He'd always defined himself by his career, his success, his status. Without that, he seemed lost. He gained weight, stopped shaving regularly. When he came to pick up the kids, he looked like a shadow of the man he used to be. Melissa, I learned through mutual friends, had transferred to a different office and cut off all contact with David. She'd apparently claimed that he pursued her, that she'd felt pressured because of their work relationship. Whether that was true or just her protecting herself, I didn't know. But David was left alone to face everything. Part of me felt satisfaction watching him struggle. This was what he deserved. This was justice. But another part of me, a part I didn't want to acknowledge, felt something close to pity, not because I forgave him. Not because I thought he didn't deserve consequences, but because I could see that he was genuinely broken. And despite everything, despite all the pain he'd caused, there was a tiny part of me that remembered loving him. That part was inconvenient. I tried to ignore it. 3 months after David moved out, I received an unexpected call from his mother, Janet. We'd always had a good relationship, but I'd been avoiding her calls since the divorce proceedings started. It was too complicated, too painful to explain everything. "Caroline," she said when I finally answered, "I've been trying to reach you." "I know," I said. "I'm sorry, things have been busy. I need to talk to you about David." I tensed. "What about him?" "He's not doing well," she said carefully. "I'm worried about him. He's lost so much weight. He barely leaves his apartment except to see the kids. And he's drinking." That last part surprised me. David had never been much of a drinker. A beer with dinner sometimes, wine at social events, but not regularly. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I genuinely was. "But I don't know what you expect me to do about it." "Talk to him," Janet pleaded. "He listens to you. He always has." "Not anymore, he doesn't," I replied. "Janet, I appreciate your concern for your son, but he and I are getting divorced. His well-being isn't my responsibility anymore. He made a terrible mistake," she said. "I'm not defending what he did. But Caroline, he's my son. I can't stand watching him self-destruct like this." "Then maybe you should talk to him," I suggested. Encourage him to get therapy, help him find a new job. Be his mother. But don't ask me to fix this. He broke us. I can't put him back together. She was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, he still loves you, you know. That's not my problem, I said, and I meant it. His feelings were no longer my concern. After I hung up, I felt unsettled. I didn't want to care about David's well-being. I didn't want to feel responsible for his pain. But 30 years of being a caring person don't disappear overnight, even when directed towards someone who hurt you. I mentioned the conversation to my therapist during our next session. Yes, I was seeing a therapist now too. Turns out betrayal and divorce require professional help to process. It's normal to still have complicated feelings, Dr. Komblick Martinez told me. You spent 12 years building a life with this man. Those feelings don't just vanish because he hurt you. But I don't want to have feelings about him anymore, I said. I want to be done. I want to not care. That's a different kind of caring than love, she pointed out. You can stop loving someone romantically while still caring about them as a human being. Especially when they're the father of your children. So what do I do with these feelings? I asked. You acknowledge them, she said. You don't act on them in ways that compromise your healing, but you allow yourself to be a full human with complex emotions. The goal isn't to become cold or heartless. The goal is to establish healthy boundaries while maintaining your humanity. That made sense. I didn't want to become someone bitter and hard. I just wanted to move forward. The divorce proceedings continued to grind forward. We'd reached the negotiation phase where our lawyers tried to settle everything without going to court. Rebecca was aggressive in her demands. We're asking for 60% of marital assets, she told me. Plus alimony for 5 years while you establish your career, child support according to state guidelines. And he pays all marital debt. Is that fair? I asked. She gave me a sharp look. Fair? He had an affair. He dissipated marital assets. He destroyed his career through his own misconduct. Yes, Caroline, it's fair. It's more than fair. David's lawyer pushed back hard. They offered a 50-50 split with minimal alimony, claiming David's current unemployment meant he couldn't afford more. That's ridiculous, Rebecca said when she told me about their counteroffer. His employment situation is temporary and self-created. The court will see through that. But part of me wondered if we were being too harsh. Yes, David had betrayed me. Yes, he deserved consequences. But did he deserve to be financially crippled for years? Did our kids benefit from having a father who was struggling and bitter? I don't know if I want to push this hard, I told Rebecca during one of our strategy sessions. She studied me carefully. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we accept something closer to the middle. Maybe we don't try to take everything. Caroline, this is the time to be strategic, Rebecca warned. Once we settle, we can't go back and ask for more. Are you sure you want to ease up now? I thought about David's mother's call. About the man I'd seen picking up the kids, defeated and diminished. About the fact that making him miserable wouldn't actually make me happy. I want what's fair, I said finally. Fair for both of us. I don't want revenge anymore. I just want to move on. Rebecca nodded slowly. All right. Let me see what I can negotiate. In the end, we settled on 55% of assets for me, 3 years of modest alimony, standard child support, and an agreement to split major expenses for the kids. It wasn't everything Rebecca had wanted to fight for, but it felt right to me. When David's lawyer called him with a settlement offer, he asked to speak with me directly. Are you sure you want to do that? Rebecca asked. Yes, I said. Just once. I need to close this chapter. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between our places. I got there first, ordering tea and sitting at a corner table. When David walked in, I barely recognized him. He'd lost at least 20 pounds. His clothes hung loose on his frame. He looked older than his 43 years. He sat down across from me without ordering anything. Thank you for meeting me. Your lawyer said you wanted to talk about the settlement. I do, he said. But first, I need to say something. I'm sorry, Caroline. I know I've said it before, but I don't think I really understood what I was apologizing for until recently. I didn't just betray you. I betrayed us. Our family. Everything we built together. And I destroyed it for something that wasn't even real. What do you mean? I asked, curious despite myself. Melissa, he said. Whatever I thought we had, it wasn't love. It wasn't even real affection. It was just escape. From getting older, from responsibility, from feeling like my life was predictable and small. I wanted to feel young and exciting again. And I convinced myself that what I felt for her was special, but it wasn't. It was just selfishness. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just waited. I know it doesn't change anything, he continued. I know sorry isn't enough. But I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I gave up, what I destroyed, and I have to live with that every day. Yes, I said quietly. You do. The settlement your lawyer proposed, he said, shifting topics. It's more generous than I expected. Given everything, I thought you'd want to take me for everything I had. I did, I admitted. For a while, that's exactly what I wanted. But then I realized that making you suffer doesn't actually heal me. It just keeps me tied to you, to this anger, to the past. I need to let go, David, and that means being fair, even when you weren't. His eyes filled with tears. You're a better person than I deserve. I'm not doing this for you, I clarified. I'm doing it for me. And for Emma and Jake. They need a father who's functional, not one who's completely destroyed. My revenge won't help them. Thank you, he whispered. Don't thank me, I said, standing up. Just sign the papers. Get therapy. Find a new job. Be the father our kids need. That's all the thanks I want. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because I'd forgiven David exactly, but because I'd chosen to release the need for revenge. I'd chosen my own peace over his punishment. 6 months after David moved out, I stood in my kitchen making breakfast for the kids and realized something surprising. I was happy. Not the same carefree happiness I'd had before everything fell apart. This was something different. Quieter, more grounded. The happiness of someone who'd survived something terrible and come out stronger on the other side. Emma and Jake were adjusting better now. The nightmares had stopped. Emma had made new friends at school. Jake had joined a soccer team. They still had hard days, moments when they missed the family we used to be. But more and more, they were accepting our new normal. David had found a job at a smaller consulting firm, one that didn't have his old company's prestige but paid enough for him to support himself and contribute to the kids' expenses. He'd started therapy, stopped drinking, and was slowly rebuilding his life. When he picked up the kids, he looked healthier. More present, more like the father they needed. We'd established a civil co-parenting relationship. We'd never be friends, but we could be respectful. We could coordinate schedules, discuss the kids' needs, even occasionally share a brief conversation about their day without it devolving into arguments. It wasn't the marriage I'd wanted, but it was a functional divorce. And that was something. Patricia continued to be my rock, stopping by most mornings for coffee and conversation. She'd become like family, more reliable than many of my actual relatives. You've come so far, she told me one morning as we sat at my kitchen table. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, I said honestly. You gave me the strength to stand up for myself when I wanted to just collapse. You had that strength all along, Patricia said. I just helped you see it. I'd also started making changes in my own life. I'd gone back to school to finish the degree I'd abandoned when I got pregnant with Emma. I was studying business administration, thinking I might start my own consulting practice eventually. Ironic, maybe, but I was good at it. Better than David had ever been at the interpersonal parts of the job. I'd also started dating, though nothing serious. A few coffee dates, one dinner that went nowhere. I wasn't looking for another relationship, but I was learning to see myself as someone whole and complete on my own. Someone who didn't need a man to define her worth. One afternoon, while I was picking the kids up from school, I ran into Melissa Chen. She was with a man I didn't recognize. Both of them dressed professionally, clearly on lunch break from nearby offices. Our eyes met across the parking lot. For a moment, I thought about confronting her, asking her how she'd justified destroying a family, telling her exactly what her affair with David had cost. But then I realized something. She was just a person, not a villain. Not a monster, just someone who'd made bad choices, like all of us do sometimes. And whatever guilt or consequences she was living with, they weren't my responsibility. My anger toward her had nothing to do with her, really. She was just a convenient target for rage that belonged to David. So I just looked at her for a moment, then turned away and helped my kids into the car. I didn't need that confrontation. I didn't need that closure. I was already moving forward, and she was just a footnote in my past. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine and thought about the journey I'd been on. 6 months ago, I'd been devastated, broken, consumed by betrayal and thoughts of revenge. I'd gotten my revenge, in a way. David had lost his job, his marriage, his reputation. He'd faced real consequences for his actions. And while I didn't regret exposing his misconduct, I'd learned that revenge doesn't actually fix anything. It doesn't erase pain or restore trust. It just adds more destruction to an already broken situation. What had actually healed me wasn't revenge. It was choosing myself, standing up for my worth, refusing to accept betrayal as something I had to just live with, building a new life that didn't depend on David or anyone else to be complete. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma, even though she was just upstairs. "Love you, Mom. Thanks for everything." I smiled. She'd started doing that lately, sending random appreciation texts. Her therapist said it was her way of expressing the security she felt, knowing I was stable and present even through all the chaos. "Love you too, sweetie," I texted back. A year after the divorce was finalized, I threw myself a party. Not a big celebration, just close friends and family gathering in my backyard for a barbecue. A quiet acknowledgement of survival and new beginnings. Patricia was there, of course, helping me set up tables and laughing at my attempts to work the new grill I'd bought. My sister came in from out of state, bringing her kids so Emma and Jake could play with their cousins, a few friends from my classes, a couple of neighbors. It was simple, but it was mine. My life, my choices, my people. "Look at you," my sister said, pulling me aside while the kids played. "You're glowing. I haven't seen you look this good in years." "I feel good," I admitted. "Better than I have in a long time, maybe ever." "David really did you a favor," she said, then quickly added, "I don't mean that the way it sounds. Obviously what he did was terrible, but sometimes the worst things that happen to us end up being the catalyst for becoming who we're meant to be." I thought about that. Would I have ever left David if he hadn't betrayed me? Would I have gone back to school? Would I have learned to stand on my own? Probably not. I'd have stayed in that comfortable, safe, gradually dying marriage until we were just two strangers living in the same house. "You're right," I said. "I wouldn't wish this on anyone, but I also wouldn't trade who I've become for the person I was before." David dropped by briefly to pick up some of the kids' sports equipment they'd left at my place. I'd told him about the party, made it clear he wasn't invited, but also that he could stop by beforehand if needed. I wasn't trying to exclude him from the kids' lives, just to maintain healthy boundaries. He stood awkwardly in my driveway, looking at the decorations and people in the backyard. "Looks like a nice party." "It is," I said simply. "You look happy," he observed. "I am happy." He nodded slowly. "Good. You deserve to be happy, Caroline." "I know I have no right to say that, given everything, but I mean it." "Thank you," I said, because it was the polite thing to say. "The kids seem really good," he continued, adjusted. "Healthy. You've done an amazing job with them through all this." "We've done a good job," I corrected. "They're your kids too, David. You've stepped up as a father." "I appreciate that." He looked surprised by the acknowledgement. "I'm trying. It's the least I can do after everything I put them through." There was an awkward pause. Then he said, "I'm seeing someone. Nothing serious yet, but I wanted you to hear it from me before the kids mentioned it." I waited for the stab of jealousy or anger, but it didn't come. "I hope she makes you happy," I said, and I meant it. "Really?" He sounded skeptical. "Really," I confirmed. "I'm not saying I'm rooting for you or that everything's forgiven. But I don't wish misery on you anymore. You're the father of my children." Your happiness, your stability, matters to them. So yes, I hope you find what you're looking for." He stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "When did you get so wise?" "When I stopped letting your choices define my worth," I replied. After he left, I rejoined the party. Patricia raised her glass to me in a silent toast, and I smiled back. We both knew what we were celebrating. Not just survival, but transformation. Not just the end of one chapter, but the confident beginning of another. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home and the kids were asleep, I sat alone on my back porch again. This had become my ritual, this quiet time at the end of the day when I could reflect on everything. I thought about the woman who'd stood in that dark hallway a year ago, listening to her husband's whispered phone call. That woman had been devastated, broken, lost. She'd wanted revenge so badly it consumed her, but that woman was gone now. In her place was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth. Someone who'd learned that the best revenge isn't destruction of the person who hurt you. The best revenge is building a life so full and rich and meaningful that their absence becomes irrelevant. I pulled out my journal, something Dr. Martinez had encouraged me to keep. I'd been writing in it regularly, processing my feelings, tracking my growth. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, "A year ago, my world ended. Today, my new world is thriving. I learned that betrayal can break you, but only if you let it. I learned that revenge might feel satisfying in the moment, but healing feels better in the long run. I learned that I'm stronger than I ever knew, more capable than I ever believed, and more complete on my own than I was when I was half of a broken couple." David's betrayal was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But my response to it, my choice to rebuild rather than just destroy, my decision to value my own peace over his punishment, that was the best thing I ever did for myself. I'm not grateful for what he did, but I'm grateful for who I became because of it. And that's enough. 2 years after the divorce, I got a promotion at work. My small consulting business had grown faster than I'd expected, and I'd just landed a major contract with a company that would triple my income. I was standing in my office, looking at the contract I'd just signed, when my phone rang. It was David. "Caroline," he said, and I could hear something off in his voice. "Do you have a minute?" "What's wrong?" I asked, immediately thinking something had happened to the kids. "The kids are fine," he assured me quickly. "This is about me. And I know I have no right to ask this, but I need your help." I sat down. "What kind of help?" "I'm up for a big promotion," he said. "Director level. It would change everything for me career-wise. But they're doing extensive background checks, talking to references, looking into my past. And they're going to find out about your termination from your old company," I finished. "Yes," he said quietly. "My current employer knows the basic story, but this new position, they're digging deeper. They want to talk to people who knew me professionally during that time." "What does this have to do with me?" "One of their reference calls is to you," he said, "my ex-wife. They want to know about my character, my reliability, whether I've changed since then." I was quiet for a moment, processing this. "And you're asking me to give you a good reference?" "I'm asking you to be honest," he said. "Tell them whatever you think is true. I know you have no reason to help me. But I've spent 2 years rebuilding, Caroline, going to therapy, being a better father, working on myself. I'm not the same person who betrayed you." "No," I agreed, "you're not. So will you take the call?" he asked. "Will you at least give me a chance?" I thought about it, about the man he'd been, about the man he was now, about whether people truly could change or whether past mistakes should follow them forever. "I'll take the call," I said finally, "and I'll tell them the truth. All of it. The betrayal, the consequences, and everything I've observed since then. What they do with that information is up to them." "Thank you," he said, relief evident in his voice. "That's all I can ask for." The call came a week later. A professional investigator working for the company considering David's promotion. She was thorough, asking pointed questions about our marriage, the reasons for the divorce, David's behavior during and after. I answered honestly. I told her about the affair, about the ethics violations, about his termination. I didn't sugarcoat anything, but I also told her about the 2 years since, about how he'd committed to therapy, how he'd rebuilt his relationship with our children, how he'd been consistent, reliable, and present in his co-parenting responsibilities, how he'd taken responsibility for his mistakes and worked to become better. "So, would you say he's trustworthy?" she asked. I thought carefully about my answer. "I don't trust him as a spouse. That ship has sailed. But do I trust him as a father? Yes. Do I trust him to show up when he says he will? Yes. Do I believe he's learned from his mistakes and grown as a person? Yes. Whether that makes him trustworthy in a professional capacity is for you to determine." "That's a very measured response," she observed. "I'm trying to be fair," I said. "Both to him and to your client. David made terrible choices that hurt a lot of people. But he's also worked hard to change. Those things can both be true." After I hung up, I wondered if I'd done the right thing. Part of me, a small vindictive part, thought about how satisfying it would have been to sabotage his promotion, to ensure his past followed him forever. But that wasn't who I wanted to be, and honestly, it wasn't necessary. His past had already taught him the lessons he needed to learn. My job wasn't to keep punishing him. It was to be honest and let the consequences of his actions play out naturally. A month later, David called again. "I got the promotion. Congratulations," I said, and I meant it. "They told me you gave them a really balanced reference," he said. "You could have destroyed this for me. You had every reason to." "Why didn't you?" "Because destroying you doesn't build me up," I replied. "I learned that lesson the hard way. Besides, our kids benefit from having a father who's successful and stable. Your success isn't my enemy anymore. I don't deserve your grace," he said quietly. "Probably not," I agreed. "But I'm not offering grace for you. I'm offering it for myself." Holding on to anger and vindictiveness was poisoning me. Letting go set me free. "You're remarkable, Caroline," he said. "I didn't appreciate that when we were married." I was a fool. "Yes," I said simply, "you were." 5 years after the divorce, I attended Emma's 8th grade graduation. She'd grown into a confident young woman, making honor roll and winning a leadership award. As I watched her walk across the stage, I felt overwhelming pride mixed with bittersweet awareness of how fast time was moving. David was there too, sitting on the other side of the auditorium with his girlfriend, now fiancée, Lauren. We'd met several times over the years during kid exchanges and school events. She was kind, age-appropriate, and genuinely good with Emma and Jake. I couldn't hate her even if I'd wanted to. After the ceremony, we all gathered for photos. Emma insisted that David and I stand together for one picture, her between us, all of us smiling. It was strange posing with my ex-husband like we were still a family, but we were, in a way. Not the family we planned on, but a family nonetheless. "Remember when she was born?" David said quietly as Emma ran off to find her friends. "How tiny she was. How terrified we both were that we'd somehow mess her up." "We did mess her up," I pointed out, "just not in the ways we feared." "She seems okay though," he observed. "Strong, resilient. She is," I agreed. "Both of them are. They learned that families can break and survive. That love doesn't always look the way we think it should. That's not nothing." Lauren joined us, slipping her hand into David's. "Beautiful ceremony. Emma should be so proud." "She is," I said. "We all are." Later, at the graduation party Emma had requested at our house, David pulled me aside. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Something I've wondered for years." "Sure. Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Not divorcing me, obviously. But the way you did it, reporting me to the company. The revenge aspect. Do you wish you'd handled it differently?" I thought about that carefully. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Sometimes I wonder if I went too far. If there was a way to end things with less destruction. But," he prompted, hearing the unspoken continuation. "But mostly I don't regret it," I said honestly. Because that version of me, the one who stood up and fought back, she needed to exist. I'd spent 12 years being accommodating, being supportive, putting everyone else's needs first. I needed to fight for myself even if it was messy and imperfect. "I understand that," he said, "and for what it's worth, those consequences probably saved me. If I'd gotten away with it, if there'd been no real price to pay, I don't think I would have changed. I'd have kept making the same mistakes with different people. That's probably true, I agreed. I'm glad we can talk like this, he said, like real people. Not just bitter exes. It took time, I reminded him. 5 years ago, I couldn't have stood here having a civil conversation with you. I've done a lot of work to get here. We both have, he said. Jake ran up, pulling David away to show him something. I watched them go, feeling that familiar mixture of emotions. Sadness for what we'd lost. Gratitude for what we'd built. Acceptance of what simply was. Patricia found me standing alone on the porch. She'd become like family, celebrating all the kids' milestones with us. "Penny for your thoughts," she said. "Just reflecting," I told her. "On how far we've all come. You should be proud," she said, "not just of Emma, but of yourself. You turned the worst thing that ever happened to you into a catalyst for becoming the person you were meant to be." "I had help," I said, squeezing her hand. "A lot of help. We all need help," she said. "The strength isn't in doing it alone. The strength is in accepting help when it's offered and using it to build something better." As the party wound down and guests started leaving, Emma found me in the kitchen cleaning up. "Mom," she said, wrapping her arms around me, "thank you for today." "For everything. You earned this, sweetheart," I told her. "I'm so proud of you." "I know the divorce was hard," she said, pulling back to look at me. "I know you and Dad went through something terrible. But I want you to know that I'm glad you both ended up happy. Even if it wasn't together. That's a very mature perspective," I said, surprised. "I'm almost 14, she pointed out with a smile. "I understand things now that I didn't when I was 10. And I understand that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from something that's not right. You taught me that." I felt tears prick my eyes. "You're going to do amazing things, Emma. I learned from the best," she said. After everyone left and the kids were in bed, I sat on my back porch with my ritual glass of wine, reflecting on the day. 5 years. Half a decade since my world had imploded, and here I was, not just surviving, but truly thriving. I'd rebuilt my career, raised 2 incredible kids, maintained a functional co-parenting relationship with my ex-husband, built meaningful friendships, learned to stand alone and like the woman I saw in the mirror. The betrayal that had broken me had also remade me. Not because betrayal is good or necessary, but because how I chose to respond to it had forced me to discover strength I didn't know I possessed. David's whispered phone call in the darkness hadn't just exposed his betrayal, it had been the first step in my transformation from someone who accepted whatever life handed her to someone who actively shaped her own destiny. In the aftermath of betrayal, we're often faced with a choice. We can let the pain define us, consume us, twist us into bitter versions of ourselves. Or we can use it as fuel for transformation. I chose revenge at first. I wanted David to suffer as I'd suffered, and he did. He lost his career, his reputation, his marriage. In those early days, watching him face consequences felt like justice, like restoration of balance. But here's what I learned: revenge is satisfying in the moment, but empty in the long term. What actually healed me wasn't his suffering, it was my own growth. The choice to stop defining myself in relation to his betrayal. The decision to build something new rather than just destroying what was. The real revenge, if you can even call it that, wasn't what I did to David, it was what I did for myself. Every class I took, every business success, every moment I chose my own peace over his punishment. That's the revenge that mattered. Not because it hurt him, but because it freed me. Betrayal reveals truth. It strips away comfortable illusions and forces us to see reality clearly. Sometimes that reality is devastating. Sometimes it shows us that the life we thought we had was built on lies. But it also shows us who we really are when everything else is stripped away. I learned I was stronger than I knew, more capable than I believed, more complete on my own than I'd been as half of a dysfunctional whole. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't the same as being vindictive, that having boundaries isn't the same as being unforgiving, that you can release anger without excusing betrayal, that you can acknowledge someone's growth without forgetting their mistakes. I learned that children are more resilient than we give them credit for. That they can survive their parents' divorce, even thrive in the aftermath, if both parents commit to their well-being above their own hurt. I learned that time really does heal, but only if you're actively working on healing. That you can't just wait for the pain to fade. You have to process it, understand it, and consciously choose to move beyond it. Most importantly, I learned that the goal isn't to come through betrayal unchanged. The goal is to come through it transformed into someone you're proud to be. Someone who knows their worth. Someone who won't settle for less than they deserve. David's betrayal didn't ruin my life. My response to it rebuilt my life into something better than what I'd had before. That's not to say I'm grateful he cheated. I'm not. I wouldn't wish that pain on anyone. But I am grateful for who I became in response. For the strength I discovered. For the life I built from the ruins of my marriage. And if I could go back to that night, standing in the dark hallway listening to his whispered phone call, I'd tell myself, this is going to destroy you. And that's okay. Because from that destruction, you're going to build something remarkable. You're going to discover that you don't need him. That you don't need anyone. That you are enough all by yourself. The whispered phone call exposed his betrayal. But it also exposed my strength. And in the end, that revelation was worth more than any marriage built on lies could have been. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to us becomes the catalyst for becoming our best selves. Not because the bad thing was good, but because our response to it reveals who we're capable of being. And who I became, the woman forged in the fire of betrayal and revenge and ultimately self-discovery, she's someone I'm proud to be. That's the real victory. Not that David lost, but that I won. Not against him, against the part of myself that wanted to stay broken. Against the fear that I couldn't survive without him. Against the lie that his betrayal determined my worth. I won because I chose to. And that choice, made every single day in the aftermath, that was my real revenge. That was my triumph. And it will always be enough.